I might as well talk about an anniversary that happened today that I didn't realize until now when I looked on my Facebook page, and that was the fact that it was 12 years ago today that I was an extra on the set of The Dark Knight Rises, and that was probably one of my favorite days that I've ever had in my life. And basically, what happened is, and I saw a picture that I took from that day that happened, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But I'll kind of delve into what actually happened. I'm going to talk about how I became an extra. So basically, the local news around here, WPXI, was talking about them. They were advertising the production team behind The Dark Knight Rises. They were looking for unpaid extras to take part in a fictional football game between the Gotham Rogues and the Rapid City Marauders. And I wasn't going to let that opportunity get away from me. So I actually signed up a few weeks prior to this. And after I signed up, they gave me my set. They gave me my info pack. They basically told me what to wear. I couldn't wear anything with like a name brand on it. So I couldn't have anything from Nike. I couldn't wear anything with characters on it per se. They just said dress in, I think it was dress in black, dress in yellow. So the Saturday of the shoot finally comes along, and I took a shuttle bus from the Mellon Arena back then, right next to PPG Paints Arena, down to Heinz Field, which had been transformed for the day as Gotham City. I had to get up there. I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning that day, and I had to be there by 6:30 in the morning, which luckily, 5 a.m. in the morning, there's not the traffic getting from where I am to downtown Pittsburgh is not a big deal because the traffic hasn't settled in yet. So we get there around 6:30 in the morning, and I arrived at the field around 7, and I sat down in one of the numerous seats, and you could tell the stadium did look very different. Parts of the field were actually lifted up. If you've seen The Dark Knight Rises, you know how the scene is set up. There were signs from the Gotham Rogues all over the place. There were, like, band displays all over the place, and there were fans in Gotham face paint and makeup, and it's interesting because the stadium was never full. I would say there was probably about maybe 20,000 people there for the day, all day, maybe even more, but the Heinz Field seats about usually, well, back then this was called Heinz Field. I know now it's called Acrisure Stadium, but the seats around them were about like 65,000 people for a football game, and about half of them were filled for much of the day. Like there'd be some areas where people would go to one corner, they would film in one corner of the area where like one area was filled up with a lot of people, and we just sit there and be waiting. And so you have director Christopher Nolan there. He's there with the producers, the cinematographers, the director of photography, and the special effects wizards, along with some other crew members. And you have the Gotham Rogues, who were actual players for the Steelers then. Ben Roethlisberger, Hines Ward, Troy Polamalu, Heath Miller, James Harrison, LaMarr Woodley. More of them. Hines Ward, he was bigger than he's ever been, because at that point he had won Dancing with the Stars. He had a double on the set for him. And you also had Bill Cowher there coming back to the city as the coach of the Rogues. And you had the mayor at the time, Luke Ravenstahl, the Pittsburgh mayor, kicking as the Rapid City Marauders. And they were all there. And finally, after everything had settled in, around 7:30 in the morning, they started shooting. And the first thing they shot was the national anthem, which was sung by this young kid. I still don't remember the name, C.J. Coyne, because you kept hearing the announcer talking about, please rise for our national anthem, sung by C.J. Coyne. And we had to do the scene around 8 times. 6 at the start and then 2 more over the course of the day. And something that I really noticed about Christopher Nolan when he directs is that he's not like any other director where, he's just sitting in a chair near the camera making sure the scene goes the way he wants to. Like, you see that in a lot of movies and TV shows where you see the director just sitting there in the camera. He's got his, he's got his hand up to his chin like, yes, continue on doing this. And no, Christopher Nolan, he's basically walking around the camera making sure the shot he wants is right. And I thought that was really interesting to see that from a director there. And it's interesting to see that in person. And so after the national anthem, where we had to move twice around the stadium like everyone else did, at around 9:30, they moved us one last time. And I was really lucky that I got a seat right near the end zone where you could see the scoreboard straight ahead. Like, I had one of the best seats in the house. Like, this is the area where, like, if you were any closer, you'd be on the field. That's how good this place was. There was one bad thing that happened, though, and that was that the sun was out all day long. On that day, it was 87 degrees outside, and we all had to wear coats and winter gear because the movie takes place in the wintertime, and so you're trying to act like it's wintertime when it's like almost 90 degrees outside. That is not an easy thing to do, and I envy those people that have to go. I envy those people. I envy those actors who do that. That is not an easy thing to do from seeing it in person. But So they then ended up shooting crowd shots, cheers and applause from the audience for the soundtrack for the scene. And then after that, the next scene was the kickoff of the football game, where Hines Ward is playing himself behind the back of the shirt that says Ward on it, catches the ball and runs in for the touchdown. And this scene takes about 7 takes to shoot in the span of an hour. So they did that. And then after that, they prepared us for this big explosion shot where the stadium explodes. We have numerous practices takes to prepare for the explosions with the announcers making the explosion sounds, because well, they give you these earplugs so you can put them in your ears while the explosion is happening. So it took them 3 hours to put all these explosives on the field, and there were about, I want to say, 35 different explosives ready to blow up. So while they were preparing for the scene, they actually bought out the 3 different tumblers that Batman uses in the film, with the second one featuring Hines Ward on top of one of them. And during the breaks in between shootings, they even gave out free t-shirts, raffle prizes like a flat-screen TV, tickets to the Dark Knight premiere in either Los Angeles and New York, round-trip Delta tickets, portable DVD players, iPod shuffles, iPod touches, Batman memorabilia, movie memorabilia, vintage trading cards, comic books. They even gave away a Chrysler car, too, and I didn't end up winning one of those major raffle prizes, but I did end up winning a free t-shirt, even though it won't fit me, but I still have that it's in here somewhere, so I don't know where exactly it might be at, but the interesting thing is that the part of the stadium where I was sitting, the production assistant for our section was nowhere to be found, and the PAs were responsible for throwing everybody free t-shirts, and because the PA announcer was nowhere to be found, people went crazy trying to get this t-shirt. They asked more for the t-shirts rather than the raffle prizes, and when they finally had someone come up and give away the t-shirts, I was lucky enough to catch one of them, but again, it was too small for me to wear. But also on the stadium's Jumbotron, they actually played the Dark Knight Rises trailer on the big screen, which made up for the fact that when I went to see Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, when that came out, there was no trailer for that in front of that movie, and I was really bummed out because I really wanted to see that on a big screen, but I saw it on the stadium's Jumbotron, and I figured that's the closest thing I'm ever going to get to see that trailer on the big screen. And when that name came up, it felt like a Comic-Con panel. People just lost their minds and cheered like crazy. So finally, after 3 hours of putting the explosives on the field, they gave us 3 more practice shots without the explosives going off, because it's a one-shot only scene, for obvious reasons. So after all that, we finally shoot it with the explosion. They told everybody to act scared and panic, and that's what we did. But then again, if you had explosions going off with the noise that came afterwards, I don't think you really need people to act scared and panic, because, well, obviously for the obvious reasons. And like I said, they gave us earplugs for people to cover the ears, and after the explosions ended, the field was covered with dust all over the place, dirt all over the place. And then 5:30 in the afternoon finally came around, and they began shooting the last scene of the day, and that was the arrival of Tom Hardy as Bane, which, coming out from under the area where the players walk out of the locker rooms and looking around, letting out some dialogue, and then killing a man by breaking his neck. And the interesting thing is that when Bane came out for that scene, it was the first time anyone had seen Tom Hardy on set and seen him as Bane for the first time, and the crew asked us to act as if the character was Bane was right there and not shout and holler and cheer for Hardy, which, I mean, it went about as much as you'd expect. The shot was done, the stadium roared with applause as the crew was introduced to Hardy. It was the second film he ever shot in Pittsburgh, with the first one being Warrior, which is an underrated film that came out around that same time. And then after we finished shooting the scene 4 takes later, he helped give away the car at the end of the day. And so the day came to an end with Hardy and Christopher Nolan thanking everybody for coming out, bearing the heat, and he helped to give away tickets to the Dark Knight premiere. So we were there for about 12 and a half hours pretty much, so because we left around 7. The stadium, and then the worst part of the whole experience began, and that was trying to leave the stadium. And I walked down the walkway to leave the stadium, and all you could see is the back of people's heads trying to get out of there. There was like only 3 different lines, and the largest and longest one to get out of was to get back to the Civic Arena, the Mellon Arena. But there were so many people there, not to mention the fact that it was still humid out. Keep in mind, this is still August, so the sun was still out, and a couple people actually passed out because of the humidity and the heat. So I waited in line for 45 minutes. I was literally standing in a line waiting to get on the shuttle bus for 45 minutes, and it was ridiculous. They needed more assistants to help control the lines better. There were only 3 assistants out there to guide everyone to the 3 buses going to the 3 different places. So you sit there for 45 minutes. You're still in this winter getup because You have to keep pretending that it's still winter time, even though you could take the clothes off, those clothes off, but it's still hot out, and the heat and the humidity, it just takes a lot out of you. It took a lot out of me. So finally around 8:30, I finally make it back to the Civic Arena, and then I make it back to home. Got home around 10:30, and I was so tired after I got my shower. I basically went to bed at 11 o'clock and slept for almost 12 hours that next day. I mean, I'm a person that usually likes to stay up until about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, but I was just so pooped, and I was just like, I can't take it anymore. I gotta go to bed. And so after all that, I woke up the next morning feeling a lot better. And besides the pain in the ass way to get out of the stadium, it was still one of the best days I ever had. It's a great time experiencing watching them make this movie of what I was hoping was going to be a great movie, which was a good movie. It wasn't the great film that The Dark Knight was. The Dark Knight is still the pinnacle of the Batman Nolan trilogy, but it was still a good film regardless, and I'm very happy to tell people that I was an extra in the film, even though you can't see me in the movie. But it's one of those moments that whenever I see that scene on TV, I just have to go back and reminisce about that day, and it was worth it. Like, would I do it again? I mean, it would depend on what the movie is and when they shoot it, because of my work schedule and all that. I don't know if I could do what I had to do there, sitting out in the heat for an entire day in 87-degree weather, and my face was like totally sunburned after that, and it was pretty rough on my body, but it's one of those days I'll never forget. That's one of my favorite days of my entire life, was being on the set of that movie, and that happened 12 years ago today. And